So welcome everyone to Career Speaker Series. Today we are joined with Jessica Sheeley-Saunders. Jessica is a line producer at Ambergate Productions and spent 15 years in television production. Jessica has helped produce shows such as The Voice, Contender, Survivor, and Shark Tank. And most recently, her talents have led her to producing shows for Amazon. So we are really happy and fortunate to have Jessica here. So everyone, if we can give her a virtual applause and welcome Jessica. Hello, how are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How's your week been?
So far so good. I'm working in multiple time zones, so it's a little bit crazy. Different times of the day are slow, different times of the day are a little busy. So doing my best.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So, it sounded very interesting, doing a little bit about your title, but could you explain for those, and including myself, what a line producer does, what that is, and what is the day, what does a day in the line producer's life look like?
Sure. So it depends on what you're doing, but a line producer is basically the person who's in charge of the money side of things for whatever project they're on, TV shows, films, so on and so forth. So my main job is to manage the budget, make sure we're staying on track as we move into production and all the things that we're shooting and setting up. But on top of that, I'm also the person who's in charge of managing the crew, hiring people, managing the production team, and being a conduit between the network and the show creative, making sure that what people want to happen is something we can pull off. And if it's not something we can afford, how we can get as close as possible without going over budget, basically. So day to day is just a lot of, paperwork and checking in with everybody, keeping things moving. When we're actually shooting, it's schedules and making sure that the day is running smoothly. And it's a lot of crisis management and problem solving when things arise. That's usually what I tell people my job is, crisis management, because that's how you spend most of your time.
That's so interesting. Something often overlooked is the budget for shows to be produced. Are there many shows that don't get to be seen by us, the viewers, because of budget issues? Like they don't make it?
Sometimes, it's very common that, it's the constant battle between creative and the real world of money, is that, creatives, we tell them dream big, ask for everything you want. And then when you have to tie a number to that, that can be very challenging. And so there is a lot of time where there are shows that'll get a first season and they'll go big and they'll go over budget, and then second season, the network has to decide if it's worth it to them to make that investment again, or if it's better for them to cut their losses. And so you just have to find this really fine line of making it look great and spending the money you need to spend without going overboard so that you're not jeopardizing something for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there that you get to hire. Do you work directly with talent? Do you hire talent, or meaning the celebrities who come out on these shows, or is that a separate field?
It's usually a separate team, depending on the type of show. So like a show like The Voice or Shark Tank, they have a specific team that is responsible for finding the coaches or the sharks, because they have those relationships so that they already know those people and can reach out and have those conversations. Talent conversations are very complicated. Not to say that I can't be involved in those. I am from a money standpoint, and what they need to get paid per episode, or like what their asks are. A lot of time with celebrities, they're asking for specific travel needs. Certain people only want to fly on a private plane versus a first class ticket, things like that. And then you have to like kind of get into that negotiation of what we can afford and what they feel is worth spending to get the person that they really, really want.
Right.
On a TV show, like a scripted show, so say, Charmed or any one of those kind of shows that are regular sitcom type things, you have a specific casting department that handles that kind of stuff. And so I would manage the casting department. I would tell them what their budget is, but they would manage the reaching out and actually booking the people that need to be booked for the roles that are needing to be filled.
That's awesome. And what has been your favorite show to work on to this point, and why?
Um, I've had a very varied career. I've done a lot of stuff. I think my favorite and was the most challenging was a couple of years ago, we did Eco Challenge for Amazon, which is a very, very massive adventure race that we did in Fiji. Um, and it's on Amazon, so you can see it. It only did one season, but basically we had to set up a 3-week long race for 65 teams of 3. And these are real people who do these crazy survivor type adventure races. So they're dirt biking and paddling in, canoes in the rivers and climbing mountains. And so we had to set up a 3-week long race that was across the entire island of Fiji, and figure out how to get into some very hard to reach places to get cameras and all sorts of, things we need to actually shoot the show. But the challenge is, I think, what makes it fun, because it's something I can say, like, we did it. We actually pulled it off and it looked really good. And it was really fun. Once you get through it and you're like, oh, it's over. That was kind of fun. Not necessarily in the moment when you're tired and running around on an island somewhere.
Yeah, I think like most major challenges, it's looking back on that. That's so interesting. Yeah, I don't know if students feel the same way, but we often don't appreciate the work that goes into some of these really awesome, either just highly, you know, needing to film in a different country. It's just I can only imagine the work that goes behind that. Did you always know that this was something that you wanted to do? Did you always want to work in television?
So yes and no. I mean, I grew up here in Los Angeles in the Valley. I was a Valley girl born and raised. So film production is a big part of life in Los Angeles. My grandfather worked at UCLA Film School. So I'd been around it. When I started college, I actually started in a different major completely. I would decide I was going to do psychology. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this isn't really where I want to be. And so I ended up in film school, and I actually went to CSUN for film school, and I wanted to be an editor, and I wanted to do edit trailers, movie trailers. And I came out of school at a really bad time for the industry, right around one of the writer strikes that happened. So a lot of shows had to shut down, and I ended up in reality TV. Just by chance, a friend asked me to be a production assistant on something, and it was a music show. It was like a live concert type show. And once I set foot on set and saw how much fun it was, I couldn't go back to being an editor. I couldn't go back to sitting in a dark room by myself. It just was like, nope, this isn't going to work. I'm too social. It's too fun to be around all these people and seeing all the different people it takes to make something like this happen. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then I just kind of fell into it and kept going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Just to backtrack a bit, around what year year in college did you switch from psychology to film?
It was after the first year. So I did the first year of psychology, and I can't even tell you what the specific moment was, but I just had this feeling of, I tried it, it was interesting. And I was just like, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like the right path for me just yet. And I looked around school to see what kind of things were going on. And the more I thought about it, I was like, why wouldn't I take the opportunity to go into something that is the heart of the city I'm already living in? Let's use those connections and that. People move here to do this, and I'm already lucky enough to have lived here my whole life. So let's see what we can do with it.
That's awesome. I know I can't see them, but I know that on this call we have students who have some really awesome talents. In my years working with students, some students have told me that they produce YouTube videos, and so that I know that they're here. What, in addition to education, what other things might they do when they go to college if they want to go into a career in film?
The biggest thing with going to school is always super important. And the main reason you go to film school, you can learn those things without going to school, absolutely. But the reason you go to film school is you go to make the contacts that you're going to be working with for the next 20 years. So the people that I went to film school, the ones that are still in the industry, I still talk to, or they have led to my connections to getting me in further into jobs that I love. And so, and necessarily, I learned a lot in film school and I'm grateful for it and I wouldn't change that. But it was the people I met and the connections and helping out on other people's projects. Those are the things that help further this career, because when people see what you're good at and see what you're interested in, they want to help push you in that direction. And so I had people who asked me to be a PA and I would work for free on things during spring break. And those connections are what led me to paying jobs when school was done. And then you just keep building that base of people who you've proven yourself to.
Awesome, awesome. Will we put that under the umbrella of networking?
Yes,
Networking with people.
this
Okay,
job is a lot of networking.
yeah, yeah. I think that's something that we try to stress to students, but um,
And it's
that's
hard. I mean, networking doesn't come naturally to me. I don't, love going to these events and meeting people I've never talked to before. It's hard, it's really hard to put yourself out there and make conversation, especially if you're someone who's a little bit more introverted and shy. But when you know the reason you need to do it, that helps give you a little bit of that courage to try it.
yeah. That's has is. Would you say that Los Angeles is still a great place for film? I just in my very basic knowledge, I know that other filming in other parts of the country has increased versus how it used to be. If students maybe in a similar situation want to take advantage of the film industry in Los Angeles, TV and movie, is it still a good place for them to venture into?
Yes, it depends on what they want to do. There's tons of unscripted or reality TV. There's tons of scripted TV. Films are a little bit fewer here in LA, but that's not to say that you don't make the connections here to travel somewhere else to make those films. So basically, everything is still mainly headquartered here, even if they're not shooting here. And so it's still a really wonderful place to be, to make all of those connections and start your career. And then that can lead you somewhere else. There is a lot of production in Atlanta now. So there are a lot of people who've moved to Atlanta, but those people that move there are the people that want to be the crew members. So if you're someone who wants to be a camera operator or a sound technician or something like that, then yes, it's great to move to, say, Atlanta or Vancouver in Canada or somewhere like that where a lot of shooting is happening. But if you're someone who's a little bit more on the creative side, trying to make your own content or, be a music producer who wants to do the music in shows, LA is still the place you want to be able to do those sorts of things.
That's awesome. That's awesome to note. Being that we're here and we might as well take advantage of that if that's something that you're interested in. On average, we don't need a precise number, but how many jobs would you say exist on a reality show? Just to produce a reality show, how many different jobs are help put on a show that we take advantage of and watch?
So depending on the type of show, like if it's a big show like The Voice has a crew of between 200 and 300 people. If it's a show like The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, it's a crew of 50, maybe a little bit more if you count the people who edit and do all of that kind of stuff too. So it's very, in the unscripted world, the reality world, it's a very big field of small to big, and really depends on the type of show. So when you're doing the big like stage shows like The Voice or Shark Tank or America's Got Talent, those kinds of things, they're going to have larger crews because it takes a lot more effort to put on a show on a stage like that. There's a lot more lighting involved. There's a lot, music is a whole separate department and all those kinds of things. If you're talking about your good old fashioned Kardashian chasing people around reality, it's a smaller crew because they want to be able to move fast. You're out in the real world. But I hate to break it to you, it's all still produced and they know exactly where they're going and what they're doing. So it's not too much of a surprise.
Yeah, I hope we're not breaking any dreams here.
Yeah, don't want to dash any
Bursting
hope.
any bubbles. um that's awesome. We have a question. If working on a show that is filming in another place, do you get to go there as well, or do you stay in LA?
So it depends on the show. Most of the time I get to travel if I choose to. The show that I'm on now was shooting in New Zealand for season 1. So because of COVID, I didn't ever get to go visit because New Zealand was very strict with their COVID rules. So I couldn't actually get into the country. So I did everything from here in LA. But for the most part, for Eco Challenge, I went to Fiji. For Coupled, I went to Anguilla to help manage that show. I've been all over the country. I've probably been to 40 of the 50 states at this point. And so most of the time I'll get to travel. Occasionally, I will stay in LA and just manage from here while my team goes out and does what they need to do.
And how has COVID affected production? That's a really great question.
Oof. I have to say I'm really, really proud of my industry for being able to manage during this time. COVID has, the main point is it's made everything more expensive, which people do not like to hear. But I think that it also reminded everybody how important TV and entertainment is to them. We were all locked in our houses for months and months. What were we all doing? We were all watching Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and all those things and, watching TV shows. And so COVID really forced productions to find a safe way to keep working. And I think they tried really hard and they did a fairly good job. It involved a lot of testing. There were a lot of rules. And in production, the way they did that was we created these zones. So there's zone A, B, and C. And so zone A is anyone who has direct contact with talent who has to have their masks off to do their job. And so basically those people had to be tested every 3 days. There were an entire team of people constantly cleaning and wiping, and people had to be distanced, and it made it a challenge, but somehow they pulled it off. And most of the shows have done well at not having to shut down. There have been a few in other countries that have had some problems. But that typically comes from people who don't want to follow the rules that have been laid out. And there's always going to be someone who doesn't want to follow rules. It's just the nature of humankind. And we just have to do our best to pivot and keep going.
Right. Yeah, I want to echo what our admin has posted in the chat. So if you all have any questions, please, this is the time where you can definitely get those questions answered. Now we have an understanding of the kind of work that Jessica does. So please, if you have them, please list them. And we have one here. What kind of person would you like to do your job?
So my job specifically is for someone who's very organized. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of critical thinking, people who like to do puzzles, because for me, that's what a budget is. Part of my job is also, I worked at MGM for 5 years, and part of my job was building budgets for ideas that my creatives wanted to sell as a show. And so they'd come to me and be like, hey, we want to do this kind of show. How much would that cost? And so I'd have to sit down and figure out how would I shoot that? and how much all of that would cost. And so you need to be flexible in the way that you look at a problem. You need to be very organized. And I think it helps if you are someone who is very good at listening and being empathetic to other people. I find that that skill is one of the best ways to be successful at this job. When people feel like they're being heard, if you're saying no to somebody, when they feel like they're being heard, it's not just no, they can understand that you have a job to do and we have to figure out how to solve this problem. And it may not be the way they want it, but I am on their team and I'm there to solve the problem with them. And that just means there's a lot of creative thinking and like, how do we look at something from a different angle?
That's awesome. That's a great way of explaining that. Kind of to piggyback off of that question and the earlier question, is your work, your specific work, do you go into an office to do it? Do you get to work from home? How has your work been the same or shifted since COVID?
So most of the time you work in an office, and I will say me personally and other people I've worked with have been fighting for years to explain to people, I can do my job from anywhere. I don't need to be sitting in an office at all times. If there is internet and I have my computer and my phone, I can do my job. So the good news about COVID has made these companies see working from home is an option. And currently the company that I work for, Ambergate, was already a remote company before COVID happened. And so I have been working from home for the last year and a half, almost 2 years now. And then if I need to go to set, I will go to set when necessary. Other shows have gone back to working in the office because they feel like it's more conducive to getting things done. And depending on the show, that can be true. But I am seeing a lot more opportunity to continue working from home, or at least some sort of hybrid model where you get to work from home until it's time for shooting to start, and then you work in the office until that's done.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's something that's going to be, I think, on students' checklist when they look for a career, right, in a way that wasn't before the pandemic. Do I have that flexibility to work from home? Are there anything that students should prepare for? So we know that networking is important. We know that obviously knowing the field is important. Are there any other skills that students might want to prepare for today, maybe sometime in high school, or internships that they could be doing to help them gain access to this industry a little bit quicker?
Yeah. So aside from the main one of networking, internships are really great. And you guys are very fortunate that the rules have changed and those can be paid now. So if you have the opportunity, definitely do that. The main problem with this industry is that you definitely have to start from the bottom and work your way up. So an internship is a great foot in the door for people to get to know who you are. And if you're fortunate that it's a fostering place to work, they will hear what it is you're trying to do and want to do and will help to push you in that direction. Not everyone is helpful like that, but if you go in with the mindset that there is someone there to help you, you usually can find someone who's willing to help you. My other thing that I think is super important is be willing to learn every job there is. It may not be the job you want to do, but learning what other people do really helps you be better at your job, because when someone comes to you and says that they have a problem, when you understand what their job is, you understand that problem a lot better and you're more equipped to help them solve that problem. And people trust you because you're actually understanding what it is they're trying to say. If my big thing is, I started out studying to be an editor and I ended up in production, but studying to be an editor has helped me so much in so many of my jobs because I understand that entire post-production side of things that a lot of people in production do not understand. And so it just gives you another skill for people to see you're willing to try it all and you really are a team player. So the biggest thing is you have to have a good attitude. This job is hard. working on TV production is very long hours. It's not always glamorous. It is very hard work. But the payoff is that you actually get to see what it is you're working on when it's done. So that helps you, remind you why you're doing it. And having a good attitude is going to be the thing that people remember when they're thinking of hiring someone again for the next show, because they're going to remember that you were ready to go and wanted to do it. That doesn't mean take abuse from people, but it does mean doing your best to stay positive and being ready to help wherever you can.
Great advice. I would agree that applies also in education.
Yeah.
What is the best advice that you got when you were in high school or college about your career goals?
I think the best advice I ever got was always take the interview. Even if it's not a job that you think is going to be the right choice, if someone calls you or reaches out to and wants to interview for you for something, say yes. You always take that meeting, because whether it's the right job for you, you're going to make a new connection. And in that conversation with that person, they may realize it's not the right job for you, but they might know someone who would be a good fit for you. And so my mentors who've helped train me and move me up in this world have always been very open and said, do not stay in one place for too long. Find other people to work with so that you're widening your circle, so that you have contacts. You know, as a woman in this industry, it can be a challenge. You know, things are changing, things are getting better. But when I started in college as an editor film major, I had a lot of guys tell me that I was crazy. There are no female editors. And so it just takes that determination of not giving up and believing the people who are telling you that you can't do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. It seems that things are changing in a positive direction. And so we are nearing the end of this particular session, and I just want to thank you, Jessica, for taking the time to let us know about your work and really give us insight that we wouldn't normally get. And I think this is where we're really getting at the purpose of what this career speaker is giving that insight to students about careers that often they may not know about firsthand. And then, so we'll just conclude today with maybe some career advice that you would give our students who are maybe considering some things, maybe scared to change their opinion or change their mind on a career later on.
I mean, this is the time to try all the things. So don't be afraid to try something different or take a chance. I mean, we live in a very digital world now, so the opportunities to get stuff seen are way higher than they ever were. And it's scary. It's scary to take a jump and take a risk, but those risks sometimes pay off. And so it's now is the time to try all those things, so that if you fall, you just get back up and you try again. It's not a big deal if you fail. Failure is not a bad thing.
Thank you, everyone who joined us today. I hope that you all feel you know a little bit more. And if there's questions that you held back on, please get those over to Fulfillment Fund, and we will get those over to Jessica. So.
Yep, happy to answer any questions. Feel free to reach out. I am here to help.